بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. We begin, of course, by praising Allah, our Lord, our Creator. We testify to His oneness and greatness, and we testify to the prophethood of His most beloved Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah khairan to everybody that's logged on. MashaAllah, we had over 100 people register for this webinar. Leaders from all over the country. We ask Allah to bless you all and to accept from you all and to allow us. I think everybody's here for the month of Ramadan, but hopefully this session, and it's like right around the corner, hopefully this is a session to help you prepare, manage, get ready as best as possible for that rush that we all know that comes in the month of Ramadan. The energy, the excitement, the enthusiasm that we have, our community has, the excitement that we see in our masajid. Obviously, a lot of the our numbers as they spike throughout the month of Ramadan. So there's this immense rush, and what I will cover today is really some tips and tricks on how to manage that rush. Bi'ithnillah. Michelle, we have about 45 people on. May Allah reward y'all and accept y'all. For those that didn't get a chance, do introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know what city, what masjid you're a part of, what center you're part of, so that inshallah we can also kind of reflect, benefit, and learn and connect with one another as part of this webinar. If you're not familiar with who we are at Oak Tree Institute, so we are a nonprofit that is really dedicated to nurturing, supporting, pouring into community leaders and Muslim institutions, Muslim nonprofits that are serving the greater society. We are honored and privileged to work with hundreds of thousands of different leaders, volunteers, staff. We've had a chance to travel the country, connect with people virtually, do everything from one-on-one coaching down to very large webinars and trainings to different communities. And we've learned a lot. We've gathered a lot of information as a team and a lot of experiences. And we know the month of Ramadan is like one of these really important, critical stages that a lot of times we don't get a lot of insight or advice around. Alhamdulillah, being involved for over probably 15 years in community work, on the ground, day-to-day grinding, in masjids, in centers. There's a lot of kind of things that we pull together that we feel are some of the best practices that we want to bring to life. And inshallah, we'll do that as part of today's session. First question, though. I want to, and I'll do a little bit of a poll. Really, the question is, how ready are you for the month of Ramadan? And no, I am not talking about spiritually. Of course, I think we should all be getting ready spiritually, our relationship with the Quran, the masjid, our own individual plans, personal development plans, spiritual development plans. Definitely, that's a critical part here. But really, what I want to ask is, how ready are your teams? Is your masjid, is your leadership ready for the month of Ramadan? And what I want to do is actually I want to launch a poll that I would love for everybody to take. And the question is simply, how ready is your masjid or center for the month of Ramadan? So I want everybody to do their best to answer. The 5 choices are: we are very ready. Okay, we've been preparing for it well. It's going well, like we're getting there, things are moving well. Second option is it's a work in progress. Maybe you're joining today's session and everything is a work in progress. You're hoping to get benefit from the session. It's kind of coming along, and you're hoping that some tips and tricks that you learned today will really help you go a long way. Or you could be, hey, we're struggling to get ready. It seems like a few people are. Maybe it's on your mind, you're thinking about it, it's there, but hey, you're kind of struggling to get ready for Ramadan as a team. The last 2, alhamdulillah, nobody's chosen the last one, which is good, but the last 2 are: Ramadan is here. Yes, Ramadan is just about a few weeks away. I think we're 29 days out, so we're very, very close. And maybe you're saying, Ya Allah, I didn't even realize it's right here. Or maybe you're on and you're not really connected to your masjid or your center. Like maybe you're not a volunteer, you're not a leader, you're not a board member, and you really don't have any idea. And I definitely would love to know how many of you all are on here that really don't have any idea how your masjid or center is ready, how ready they are for Ramadan 2024. So I'll wait another just a minute or maybe a few seconds for everybody to answer before we see how the poll turns out. And by the way, just as a hint, most people are here for the session because I think it's a work in progress and they're hoping that the session helps, which is good to know. I'll give it another 10 seconds. Please cast your vote if you have not. 75% of you have. This is one of the votes that's not uncommitted, please. Try to commit here. We can uncommit in other votes. Okay. MashaAllah. All right, so here's, and I'll try to share the results. Let's see the results together. So, MashaAllah, I appreciate the 41 of you that did share with us how ready your masjid, your center is for the month of Ramadan. So out of the 41 people that answered, MashaAllah, about 10% of you, 4 of you, said that you're really ready. You're prepared, you're ready, you think things are going well. So MashaAllah, first and foremost, y'all, I think y'all can do some reactions, but let's, we want to say, clap it up, say Allahu Akbar, mashallah, to those people that are ready, the 4 of you that are already kind of grinding your masjid. So mashallah, I hope that we can maybe even learn from you some reflections you may have in how you're preparing as we go through today's session. The overwhelming majority, 68% of you say it's a work in progress. You're here, you started, it's probably you're struggling to figure it out. You started thinking about it, you started planning, you started organizing, and you're hoping this session helps. I appreciate the 68% of you. Hopefully, again, the session is of immense benefit, bidhnillah. About 7% of you are struggling, and that's okay. Hopefully I won't overwhelm you with today's session. I'll hopefully give you some things to think about in terms of readiness and preparation. So the other 7% said, oh my God, ya Allah, I didn't even know Ramadan is almost here. So they're kind of being blindsided by it. Definitely we want y'all to get to action. And a few of you don't even know how ready your masjid is, which is absolutely fine. I'm mindful that for people that are on here, being a month out, there's maybe you're coming in with a lot of different roles. Maybe you're coming in as a volunteer. Maybe you're coming in as a staff. Maybe you're coming in as an imam. Maybe you're coming in as a committee lead, a BOT, a BOD, an executive team. Right? We're here in all shapes and sizes. And what I hope is that some of the strategies or some of the things that I'll talk about today are going to be relevant to those different demographics. I do want to say, with us being about a month out, I want to kind of talk about some of the most important steps to manage the rush. And I will not repeat. I want to kind of give a little bit of a plug to several webinars that we've done pre-Ramadan every year. And if you go out to our website, oaktreeinstitute.org, or if you go out to our YouTube page, I've had several training sessions the past few or pre-Ramadans, if you will, in terms of tips and tricks, strategies that we want to talk about. Last year, I talked heavily on how to plan effectively, how to organize effectively. So there's a YouTube video. You can find it on our website. You can find it on our YouTube channel. Definitely encourage y'all to watch that. I'm not going to repeat much of what I said last year. A few years ago, I talked about how to lead the community inclusively as you can in the month of Ramadan, particularly your programs and your services, and how to think about all the different parts of our community and how to serve them. I will not repeat a lot of those things, but I will say and encourage you. Again, it's a YouTube link. You can send it to people on your team, your staff, your volunteers at your masjid. Particularly those that might be organizing. I want to kind of nudge you all towards that. What I want to do today is cover unique things that I have not talked about in the past, and really hear mostly about management. I'm going to try to kind of lean into the management piece, given that that tends to be some of the challenges that we have. How do we manage all of the work, all the things, all the tasks, all the people that need to happen? And inshallah ta'ala, that's how I'm going to think about today's session. Again, wanted this to be as much of a conversation as possible within a webinar style. So if you do have a question, I will go over 5 key steps on how to manage the Ramadan rush. If you do have a question, if you do have something you want me to answer in a particular section, I will pause after each step to try to address it so that, again, hopefully this is a little bit more conversation. All right. So If most of you, it's a work in progress. Some of you maybe didn't start. Some of you are already started. And so I've broken out, okay, what's the steps? What's the most important things for us to manage given the rush that's going to happen? I think, and I always like to start first and foremost with what I believe is the most important resource of any organization, any masjid, any center, and that's your people. It is right now is the best time to do as much as you can to start to galvanize your people. And what I mean by your people I mean the key stakeholders, the key bolts, the nuts and bolts that hold up the masjid, which are the souls and the hearts and the bodies that carry the load of the work in our communities. Those are our people. They're the most important investment. They're the most important resource. I can tell you, and again, many of you are leaders, you've seen and you've been maybe to different communities and centers and masajid. Honestly, it's never about the buildings or the carpet or the size or the infrastructure. It's never about that. The best functioning, the most effective, the most impactful centers and masajid are not because of the sheetrock and the glass and the mirrors. It really is about the people, the spirit that the people within those institutions bring. And I think here I want to organize the few levels. So number one, I think the leadership team or the leadership teams really need to start coming together now. It's important that the leadership is spearheading the Ramadan initiative. Last year, I talked about if you're a lean masjid, you don't have a lot of resources, human resources, create a task force, create one committee, one operation that's coming together. As I mentioned last year, don't think of Ramadan as a situational or a season that you're operating in. It shouldn't be normal status of operations. It's not like, hey, we have our board, we have our BOT, our BOD, our exec team, our this or that. There is a little bit of a consolidation, particularly if you're a lean or you're a middle-sized masjid, where your team should come together. Your leadership team should consolidate. If you're a bigger institution, you have a lot more moving pieces. I don't mind if you stay within that structure. But still, the leadership team has to come together to be clear on what we're trying to do this Ramadan. Assess last year's Ramadan. Go back to your notes. Go back to your feedback. Go back to the things that you might have done from last year. I talked about this in last year's webinar. If you go back and watch it, I said it's really important that you assess at the beginning, at the end, so that for next year, you're building each year on the things that you're doing across the different functions. So leadership team, get together, start to assess, start to align, start to prep, start to think about roles and responsibilities. That's really important. Once the leadership team is intact, it's really important to start to pull in your key staff. Key staff can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different masjids. But of course, leadership teams should bring in their imam or their key religious leadership. They should be bringing in their facility manager, their key operation or executive managers or teams or directors. You should be bringing in your key staff to start to orient them on our theme, our plan, our vision, our goals, our preparation for the month of Ramadan, what we're trying to do this year, right? It's really important to galvanize. And by the way, when we say galvanize, I'm not just saying to hey, let's just talk about what we want to do and how we're going to do it. But it's also creating some excitement, creating some energy, building up some of that momentum that's needed from now. And also a part of that is there's a little bit of an orientation that needs to happen at various levels. Everybody needs to be oriented in what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So the leadership team and key staff should really start to be on the same page from now, rather than, again, waiting those, for Ramadan to hit to start to get on the same page. I also think separately, now is a really critical time to galvanize seasonal staff that you might be bringing on and your volunteers. I talked to a really great organization today in the New York area. I won't say the name of the org, but they've already had a volunteers orientation and they're working on their staff orientation. And that's outstanding, because we should be thinking from now of, okay, who's the seasonal staff that we want to hire? Who are we trying to bring on? Is it for the facility? Is it for the cleaning, the maintenance, the reception? Do we need to bring on people to cook, people to manage the kitchen? Do we need to bring on another imam, another qari? Like, now maybe is even a little bit late in the game, but all the seasonal staff hires should be done now. We should be going out and looking now at all the things that we found as gaps last year and recruiting and hiring. Also, part of your seasonal staff is there are certain priorities or things you try to get away with last year with volunteers. Maybe you're babysitting, maybe you're kids sitting, maybe your youth programs, and you couldn't sustain with volunteers. This year, it might be an idea to go to seasonal staff. So, hey, we have to have babysitting for 30 days. We should hire that team. Maybe we need to add 3, 4, 5 people. We want youth initiatives, youth programs. We couldn't get by with volunteers last year. We're going to hire somebody just to do Ramadan youth or Ramadan kids. So again, think about even new seasonal staff that you might be adding, given some of those priorities or plans that you have as a team. The last thing I want to say here is your volunteers as well. Don't wait for Ramadan to start recruiting volunteers. Start to tap into your volunteers from now. Start to reach out. Start to initiate. Start to even if you don't know what you want them to do right now, which is fine. Hopefully by the end of today's webinar, I'll give you some tips on what you want them to do. But even just engaging them in an email, engaging them to come to a gathering, a dinner, a lunch, where they can start to get together and you can start to think about all the things that you can do. Definitely within the next few weeks, you want to be able to get everybody, orient them, get together, and start to connect with your key volunteers. So galvanize your people, get them excited about the spirit of Ramadan. This Ramadan is going to be super special. These are our visions, these are our goals, what we want to do. This is the excitement. This is the, new initiative, new people, meeting people, all of that stuff that needs to happen pre-Ramadan. Step one is to start with your people. I will pause again at the end of each step to see if there's any questions. Can I share the link for the previous YouTube video? Sister Arwa, good question. I can't share that right now, but if you go to, not right now, don't go on YouTube now, but if you go to YouTube, you type in Oak Tree Institute, you will see our channel. Please subscribe to our channel, and you will see that all our webinars of previous years, particularly the ones of Ramadan, they'll be out there. You can also find them on our website under the resources tab on the Oak Tree Institute website. Good call. Is there a recording of this? Yes, there will be a recording of this session as well, inshallah ta'ala, Sheikh Muhammad Shinal. All right, barakallahu feekum. All right, and again, if you have any questions, so I don't miss anything in the chat, please use the Q&A panel, and inshallah ta'ala, I'll do my best to make sure to answer it. All right, so step number one, we're really clear, galvanize your people. Now's the time to galvanize your people. Step number two, and this is where things, again, the management piece comes into play. Because if I were to drop into your masjid today, and you would give me the title of, I don't know, president, king, I don't know what you want, everybody's got really fancy titles and names in masajid now, chairman, whatever it might be. If you were to assign me the person to lead, I would first and foremost start with, well, what is everything that you do? Like, tell me everything that your masjid does. What is the checklist of all of your tasks? What is everything that you do? And I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of tasks. What I want to do is I want to outline all of your key functions and departments. If you want me to plan for the month of Ramadan, I have to know what are all the different parts that we need to be able to start to initiate some kind of management plan. So outline all of your key functions. What I did is, a very simple outline. And this is, of course, Ramadan centric. This is all the masjid stuff. So I would simply, it's almost like just like a brain dump. And I want you to outline for me, just write it out for me on the board, all the things that your masjid or your center does. So I would say, okay, let's break it up. I would assume in Ramadan, one of the most important things is like Tarawih in the main program. Okay, great. Then we might have a bunch of specialty Ramadan programs. We want to say, hey, we want a youth program for the month. We want a kids program for the month. We want a reverse program for the month. We want a moms program for the month. Whatever those specialty programs might be that you think are really critical for you and your masjid and your community this Ramadan, we're going to spell them out. What are the really important Ramadan events that you have? The first Saturday is our gala. The 27th night, the last 10 nights, our i'tikaf, our weekends, our different iftars. We're hosting iftars. We're bringing in our outreach iftars. Like, okay, tell me all the different events that you want to do. Lay them all out. Again, just a brain dump of all the things. Then there's all the other things that are already happening within the masjid. So who's all our staff and volunteers? Is everybody here? Is everybody committed? How's everybody doing? It's a good time, by the way, just as an aside. If you're a board, if you're a BOT, a BOD, whatever it might be, good time to check in on your staff. Good time even maybe to, I know it's might be crazy, but maybe give your key staff some time off before Ramadan gets crazy. May Allah protect, may Allah protect our staff. Like, hey, think about burnout management, 30 days. It's like a 30-day convention. So maybe my staff, they're worn thin. Maybe they're not ready. Let me think about managing their workload. Let me connect with them. Let me talk to them. Let me think about my volunteers, my key leaders, who's overworked, who's underworked. Let me understand what's happening. Maybe do some check-ins. But I definitely want to know who's our current staff, who's our volunteers, and that's going to be our HR functions, if you will. Then I want to know all the facility. Like, tell me all the things about the facility. What are all the things that need to happen in the facility? The reception, the opening, the closing. What is there? What is happening? What is needed in the month of Ramadan? What are our operating hours? What's all, how many people do we need to clean, to organize, to reception, to all the things that are happening in the facility? I want to know all your operations, administratively, who's here, who's not, your accountant, your admins, your program managers, tell me all the things that are happening there. Marketing, fund development. Really, what I want you to do is, you can even take one document and say it's your Ramadan plan 2024 and literally just dump everything that would need to happen in the month of Ramadan under each of these items. So that way, hopefully there's analysis of last year, but you're pulling together and you're starting to think about all the critical things under each of these functions. Ideally, again, as I mentioned, it's that leadership team. Either it's a task force or the key leadership team. But you're going to need to kind of make sure all the different parts have a clear idea of what they've done last year and what they want to do this year. Work with each of them on that. And again, we are going to know marketing needs to take place. We're going to need a welcome Ramadan email. We're going to need a flyer for our this. We're going to need a that. So I'm already going to start to have them just list all the tasks under all the functions. Simply dump all the tasks. And then, it could be one working document. A brother shared with me today, one working document for all their teams across all of their departments and functions that the entire team is working on. It's just one document. And they're putting together all of their tasks under each of those departments or functions, and then they start to prioritize. Because simply, you will dump all the things that need to happen, but then there's going to be this needs to come first, then this, then this, then this. Let's talk about your facility, for example. Right now is a good time to start checking the box on, well, we need to clean the carpet. We need to make sure things are clean. We need a masjid cleaning day. We need to bring in somebody to fix the HVAC or the AC or the doors, the bathrooms, the this, the that. So there should be already like a checklist just of your facility of all the things that need to happen. Dump all those things in there. Think from A to Z, from the beginning day of Ramadan to the last day of Ramadan. What are all those things that need to happen, and start to prioritize them in order. If you do that for each department, if all the teams come together, they're clear, just throw those all in, start to outline them, then we could start to prioritize them. That is a great step here in starting to manage and creating an expectation of what needs to happen. By the way, this also creates a great manual for your masjid. I will talk about systemizing in a few steps, but we can't systemize if we don't know all the things that need to happen. And probably, ideally, each department or each team has a leader. The leadership team is checking in on them to make sure they have their outlined tasks and then help them create their priorities. So that way, every year, you could just carbon copy this manual and use it as simple Google Doc. No need to be, I know AI and ChatGPT can spit out a whole bunch of cool stuff. but honestly, just a simple doc that everybody has can become a manual for your Ramadan operations and management for your team. So that's the step number 2 here. A checklist of all your tasks, know all your functions, list all the things that need to happen under each of those functions and departments, and then start to outline and create priorities. I will pause to see if there's any questions. Ameen to a lot of the du'as for sure. May Allah accept our du'as. Jazakallah khairan for the cool acronyms. I definitely hear many interesting acronyms for many titles. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Shinawi. That is absolutely true. Any other questions? Again, if you just joined, please use the Q&A panel. That'll be really helpful for me to see your question and try to answer it live. All right. So we said galvanize your people. We said step 2 is create that checklist of all the tasks that need to happen in the month of Ramadan. Outline all your functions and departments, all the things that you need to have an effective Ramadan. Dump all the tasks under all of those departments and functions. And as a leadership team, start to prioritize. And here, this is where I talk about, I'll kind of double click on that priority piece in step number 3. Because I think one of the biggest flaws when we are under-resourced and understaffed and really pressured, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's many leaders, there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of things happening. It gets very difficult when we don't have clarity and we don't keep first things first. First Things First, great book by Stephen Covey, by the way, classic. It's an old classic. I don't know if he coined the phrase, but it's definitely very, very well used. Is that, hey, I have to think about what are the most important things first. Let me focus my time, my energy, my efforts, because we have so limited resources. I need to focus them on the most important things. And last year, in last year's webinar, I alluded to this strategy as well, a little bit more detail there. But I want to outline here 3 things that I didn't talk about last year. Keep hinting last year's webinar, but trying to add to it. Number 1, when we say first things first, is when you have a 30 days in front of you, it's a very consolidated, very clear timeline. You should know and lock in from now the most important days and the times of the most important events and days within that calendar. We do not need to wait to figure out, well, we're going to do a fundraiser on the 27th night for our masjid. Like we don't need to wait to do that. Inshallah ta'ala, hopefully Allah gives us life, and Allahumma ballaghna Ramadan, we get to reach Ramadan, we get to reach the last 10 nights. The 27th night is going to happen, and we should be ready for that. I'll give you a quick example. I had a masjid reach out to me about 2-3 weeks ago, local masjid. They booked me for their 27th night, a lecture for their 27th night. And I was like, wow, outstanding masjid. This is like ideal. They are a month and a half out of Ramadan. They realize the 27th night is like one of our critical nights, and we should book a speaker from now for the 27th night. We don't want everybody gets locked up, everybody gets, all that stuff happening. They're already thinking about that, 6-7 weeks outside of Ramadan, because first things first. So in our map of all the things, like there's going to be things that are first things first. We know every Friday, Jummah is a critical time for every masjid. We know every weekend, your Friday and Saturdays are going to be much more jam-packed than any other time of the month. We know the last 10 nights are going to be insane. We know that the odd nights are going to be even insane. So there's things that we already know. We know that we've got to capitalize on the first, we've got to do our fundraiser for our masjid on the first weekend, not the last weekend, or some people just wait till the last weekend, whatever it might be, but lock in your key dates as special events. Lock them in from now. If you want to do something really special the first night of Ramadan, you've got to start preparing and thinking about that right now, because not in a demeaning way in any way, but really it's those really important moments and dates that we should emphasize, because our effort, our volunteer, our organization, our collaboration, our communication It's all should be really geared around the things that are most critical to our success this year in Ramadan. So lock in your key dates from now. Second, first things first, I mentioned people are really important. I have to, as a team, as a leadership team, as a director, as a manager, as an imam, whatever it might be, whatever role I might be in, as a volunteer, I have to manage the workload of my key leaders, my key volunteers, my key staff. I have to know that I can't expect my volunteers to be here for different events, then come back after iftar, then go back and be here. It's like I gotta manage workloads. I have to know that, hey, if I'm opening up my masjid on a Sunday in Ramadan and we open at 8 or 9 o'clock, that the facility manager is not going to be here till 11, 12 p.m., 11 p.m. the full day. I've got to manage. I got to start thinking about, hey, let me make sure we don't burn out somebody, particularly our key leaders, our key staff, our key volunteers. Let's figure them out. Let's get stuff off of their plate that doesn't need to be there, and let's have them focus on the most important things for us. So our imam, hey imam, again, I'm or hey youth director or somebody that works full time for the center or masjid. By the way, yeah, no, you usually come in at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock during normal days. In Ramadan, it's okay for you to come in at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, because very likely you're going to be here from 2 or 3 all the way until midnight or 1 a.m. I've got to start to manage workloads. I know my volunteers. Hey, if we know we have volunteers that are coming in for our babysitting, our kids program, our youth program, we're going to need to tell them, hey, by the way, we're going to take you off these other committees, these other responsibilities, because we just want you to focus on this during Taraweeh. Don't worry about this other initiative. Don't worry about this other task. So think about your programs and activities that are most priority and manage the workload of your key leaders and staff around those. You can't do everything. And then last, but certainly not least, again, I mentioned priorities here. Know your capabilities and try to prioritize your capabilities. I think one of the biggest flaws is trying to do so much and wearing yourself or spreading yourself so thin that you actually are you're creating a lot of failures. As I'll talk about in a few moments, most people, when they come to Ramadan, it's about the experience. And if we can focus on, within our capabilities, experiences, let's do that. So if we can't do, 30 nights of a youth program or even a weekly youth program, let's just do one youth iftar. Let's just do one revert iftar. Let's just do one community iftar. If we can't do an iftar every night in our masjid, let's just prioritize maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Let's just not do it because it's always been done that way. Let's prioritize our capabilities. Let's prioritize our resources and maximize them in the best way. And this is hard because sometimes we need to say no to things. But I think the proverbial saying is, you say no to things when you have a bigger yes. So we're going to say maybe no to this, small function or small thing, to say yes to, hey, yes, we want to do a neighbor's iftar. Yeah, let's not do another community iftar. Let's just do something for our neighbors, right? We're going to say no to something to say yes to something bigger that's a part of our vision or our strategy for the year. So thinking about prioritizing your capabilities, I think, is one of the most important kind of skills and things any masjid team needs to kind of work through. I will take some questions. And I'll pause here, again, pausing after every step. If you do have any questions, please, I'll do my best to navigate the chat, but I will look at the Q&A panel. Do you have a suggested platform to make a checklist? Honestly, it can be as simple as I mentioned, not to get too complicated, but it can be as simple as a working document with a checklist of items there. If your masjid is a little bit more advanced, if you're well-staffed, if you have a lot more moving pieces, staff, volunteers, maybe they can take time and put it into maybe some kind of software or some kind of tool. But again, honestly, I think even as simple as a checklist on one document that you call your Ramadan management manual 2024, you put in all your departments, you put in all the different steps that they need to do. Maybe they took an evaluation of last year, they pulled that out, they met as a team, they assessed last year, they put in their priorities for the year, and there you go. It's like a task list of priorities. So don't need to think it, keep it simple. keep it efficient. So no suggestions on that. Balancing the increase between religious obligations such as extra prayers and reading Quran and daily responsibilities. There's a struggle at times, and Jazakallah khair, brother Abdul Khan, Abdul Khan for sending. There's a struggle to adjust our routines to accommodate these changes. What can we do? Ramadan is the busiest time of the year. Burnout is inevitable. It's a great question, Akhi. So, for any one of us, it's a volunteer or a staff member of a nonprofit, and many of us on here are. First and foremost, it's our responsibility to manage ourselves. It really, like we all know, there's only a finite amount of energy, time and energy to get things done. And honestly, a lot of times staff, particularly even our nonprofits, they they lose out on the spiritual or the personal development because they're doing and giving so much. And doing and giving it's a jihad, it's a struggle, it's rewarded, it's important. But I still believe that there is that personal balance. There is that need to prioritize and focus on yourself as well. So I think it's important for you to understand the moments, you lay out, just like an organization lays out its first things first, its big rocks. You do the same, right? So like you take the time to realize, hey, I'm going to be traveling 28 days. I'm going to be limiting maybe my in-office time. I'm going to be working virtually. I'm going to be managing my events and my moments. I'm going to try to manage my sleep. I'm going to try to manage what's happening. So definitely, that personal responsibility, like you have to take that on yourself. I think from a leadership team, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're working with a team, you're managing staff and volunteers, you need to be very much on top of that. You need to understand, what does everybody have? What are their commitments? What are their families? What do they need to do? Honestly, sometimes we've got to be clear. Maybe, I encourage either you're a staff or a volunteer, or you're a manager of staff and volunteer, and you tell people like, hey, Tuesday is your family iftar. Tuesday and Wednesdays are your family iftar. Like it's not realistic for you to be in the masjid every night, for iftar. Like we've got to know, like, hey, my Tuesdays and Wednesdays are for my family's iftar. My one weekend, one weekend is going to be, or one day a week on the weekend is going to be just for my personal engagements. Or, hey, for me, I remember personally, I used to say, hey, there's one day a week that I don't go to the center that I work in. Or if I'm a volunteer, hey, there's one day a week where I'm not going to go and volunteer because I know I'm going to get grabbed. As soon as I walk into the center, I'm going to get grabbed somewhere. One day a week, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to pray somewhere else where nobody knows me. They don't know me. There's no expectations from me. I'm just going to benefit from Tarawih. So I think, again, it's that management, expectation, communication, particularly with your staff, particularly with your key staff. That's why I mentioned that here, with managing your workload, but even with your other staff, your key leaders, your volunteers, we've got to be able to manage the effort as much as possible. So take self-accountability, and then hopefully some steps here on how to do that. Good question. Okay, very, very good. I'll keep us moving because we have about 17 minutes before we need to finish up. So I'll get to step number 4. Step number 4, I've been alluding to a little bit, but I really need everybody to understand and emphasize the need to systemize this Ramadan. So every Ramadan, things might not be systemized, right? There might not be this attention to detail, as I'm kind of giving as a suggestion. So this year, I really want you all to think about, from now, how can we better systemize so that there's more clarity for everybody across all the things that are happening. Typically, what happens in a lot of masjids and centers is there isn't one source of truth. There isn't like one leader. There isn't one person. So you've got to create the system around that to make sure that everybody's seeing the same thing and everybody's organized around the same thing. That's why I mentioned a leadership team should start by creating a vision and a plan. Okay, create a theme, a focus for the year, articulate that, orient that to everybody else, and then start to document it. Wallahi, one document, like I mentioned, can start to articulate our theme for the year, the focus for the year. our program focus, our youth focus, our concepts, our, what are the khawat that are going to be focused on? What are the different tracks? Like, you can start to create a document that captures all of that. If you've never done this before, it's going to be more difficult this year. That's okay. If you've done documents before, make them more efficient, make them more organized. Start to template, start to enhance anything that you might have. Start to make it lean and consolidate a lot of these items so that they're not all floating around. Not every department, not every committee, not every program has got its own set of things that are happening. Start to bring things together and consolidate these items. One folder, one document, a few folders, a few documents, and we're really systemizing. And wallahi, once you spend, it's a little bit of hard work, but before Ramadan, if you start to systemize, the after Ramadan and every other Ramadan after, inshallah, will be easier and easier, because you can automatically go back to your templates. You can automatically go back to the things that you've done. You're not starting from scratch. I think a particularly important part, and it's one of the failures of a lot of masajid, is one source of truth for their calendar. One source of truth for your calendar of all things, particularly, as I mentioned, at least your most important things. So you want to make sure that, hey, this is our master calendar. Here's all the important events. Here's all the important items. And wallahi, I don't care if you want to put it on a whiteboard in your thing, you want to use Google, you want to create something else. Again, the tools and the methods, those are up to you all to decide. But you as a leadership team, or you as leaders, should emphasize that there's one source of truth when it comes to seeing the bigger picture of what's happening, who's responsible, when are they going to be there, when are we going to do it, and locking all those things in. And inshallah ta'ala, and I hope, inshallah ta'ala, and pray that once you just spend a little bit of time to write, a little bit of time to document, again, it becomes a system. The succession planning of that is really very, very, the ROI on that is infinite. The second thing here, we've been alluding to systemizing when it comes to people. So here's a moment to re-systemize your accountability, your meetings, your follow-ups. If you're a team, if you're a board that meets on usually Wednesday or Thursday night at 9 p.m., you might need to meet as a task force or a leadership team Sunday afternoons. You might need to adjust that time. The accountability measures for my volunteers, for my part-timers, for my full-timers. Again, start to have those communications of when they're going to be coming in, when they're going to be coming out, what is their expectation. Create, accountability is all around expectation alignment. So start to create that expectation from now of what is going to be happening. The follow-ups that are needed, there's quite a bit. And as much as possible, if you're like a board lead, a committee lead, you've got to be clear on how you're going to be following up. When are we going to be meeting? When are we going to be following up on things? Start to organize everybody's calendars, because we know Ramadan is, we know an hour before iftar, an hour after iftar, nobody's available. So, well, when are the different pockets that we need to set our time? Let's set our meeting times from Ramadan for now. Let's organize when our one-on-one check-ins will be from now, so on and so forth. So start to systemize that. And last, but certainly not least, because again, people get, if you want to kind of create one source of truth, it's a little bit of an administrative responsibility. But here, there should be some clarity of checklists and maybe even a software that you may be utilizing. And what I mean by that is, hey, we have a khatira every night between Taraweeh. I have to have a checklist somewhere or a bulletin board somewhere for somebody to organize that. And they need to know, you message somebody the day before, you do this, you do that. And there's a checklist that there's their role and responsibility. It could be a software. It's a good time to go back to maybe we need a CRM. Maybe all our donors, we're trying to organize our donors before Ramadan. Why are we waiting to, like, they're on Excels, they're on various documents. Maybe they're not even in a document. Maybe we should consolidate them. Maybe we should get that CRM now. Maybe we should start to putting these inputs now. Create some of that efficiency now. Reorganize our mailing list now. Reorganize our, whatever it might be, whatever software enhancements, efficiencies, tools. We start to rethink that from now, because you want to start to systemize and roll out those systems from now. Don't wait for Ramadan for it to start. Start to think about and doing it from now. Accounting softwares, CRMs for your donors, email lists, project management tools. Roll them out in the next few weeks. Don't wait for Ramadan to initiate them if you're going to start to systemize across those tools. So that's my point here. MashaAllah. Reflections. What about security? I'm going to get to security, Brother Yusuf, in a moment. Security when it comes to maybe those tasks, for sure. I'm going to talk about that. Jazakallah khair for noticing that. We just copy, Brother Afzal says that they just copy their year over year. They have a checklist for different teams, different events. Outstanding. MashaAllah, Brother Afzal. I don't know what organization you're from, but that's an outstanding job. It's a simple way to create, again, a lot of efficiency in our work. Again, maybe it's a little bit harder, particularly depends on what stage your masjid or your center may be in, but spend a little bit of time, invest a little bit more time in inshallah, and hopefully that can help. All right. There's 2 more steps I want to get to, so I'm going to do my best to get to it right now. Because I don't see any questions. And jazakallah khair to building blocks of Islam. MashaAllah. Step 5. Step 5, if you really want to manage your Ramadan really effectively, be mindful of your risks. Be mindful of all the critical risks, particularly things that can, if they were to go wrong, they would create a ripple effect of problems for you. And of course, there's an amana in leading our communities that we have to be mindful of. And the most important amana, of course, taking care of the hifz of everybody's faith and, thinking about that nourishment, but also just the sheer safety and security of everybody. And that should not ever be a line that's sacrificed in any way. And of course, not to overdo it, but be mindful of safety and security of everybody. I remember, when I was working in a community center way back when, I used to remember that we used to have youth overnights, and sometimes the youth, before I kind of got there, they would organize them, and they're in Ramadan. There's like, everybody's going to stay there all night on a Saturday night. And they never took safety and security they were never mindful of it. Like, well, there should be a chaperone. Well, there should be a guardian. There should be somebody that understands what to do in case of an emergency. There should be also, in terms of safety and security, of course, outside of just like having security, which I think is important, thinking about all the different measures from your parking lot to your different entry points, security systems, cameras, things that you might institute this year because you want to be more mindful of it. It's a great time to think about all these things now. It's a great time to think about, what are youth doing in different corners? What are kids doing? All the various things, doing a safety inspection is really important. Understanding that we need to invest in security is really important. But even the things that, we should be orienting our volunteers and our staff to, like, hey, if there's a crisis, what should happen? It's a great orientation point from now. If there's a problem, who should you go to? What do we do in case there's a crisis? Who do we go to in case there's emergency? Whatever those emergencies may be. It's a very, very important time to think about all that now, because as we all know, number one, the nature of, particularly now, the way the world is and what's happening around us, and the eye that's on Muslims. But number two, like, Ramadan is the time of year where everybody's just coming from everywhere. Like, people you've never seen, people just moved in, people you didn't know were Muslim, people you thought weren't Muslim that are Muslim. Like, it's a 30-day convention. So being on top of your nooks and crannies, being mindful of those risks, particularly around safety, security, prioritize that. Number two, we talk about a lot of priorities, right? Things that are really important. Having a plan B, forget about C, D, E, F, G, but having a plan B for important things is critical. If we have a Jummah, and we know our Jummah, the last 10 nights of Ramadan, is going to be absolutely flooded. And what if our khatib gets sick? Like, who's the backup? What if the khatib is traveling? And that's happened to me, to be honest. I'm traveling and I'm going somewhere and I didn't get there in time for Jummah. What's plan B? So if for your most critical events and moments, you have a plan B, you're actually doing a great job of being mindful of risks. Just have a plan B. If you can't do it for everything, for sure, might not be able to, But for your most critical tasks, functions, operations, events, have a plan B. Have any plan B. And if you teach each of your teams to ask the question at the very end of their meetings, what are we not thinking about? Like just at the very end, you might sit a lot of times, subhanAllah, I've been in a lot of those meetings, y'all probably have. We sit and we do like a lot of planning and all this stuff. And at the very end, nobody ever asks, what are we not thinking about? What are we not thinking about? So if every team just gets in the habit of what are we not thinking about, they'll be more mindful of risks. So what are we not thinking about? Your youth team, your babysitting team, your operations team, your facility team, your kitchen team, your tarawih team, your khatira team, whatever it might be. Hey, what are we not thinking about? And taking those moments actually allows from now each of your teams to be more mindful of risks and hopefully to be more proactive in addressing them. So be more mindful of risks, inshallah. Okay. I don't see any questions. We have about 5 minutes. I want to be appreciative of that time. So last item that I want to talk about here, and I'll finish with this. Quality of experiences. At the end of the day, my brothers and sisters, well, like everything I've talked about doing, managing, organizing, it's really important that we understand Ramadan is all about experiences and the quality of those experiences. So if you think about what do you remember from last Ramadan? Just take a moment and reflect for yourself. Do you remember khatira? Do you remember khutbah? Do you remember? You probably remember moments where tarawih was the recitation moment was super emotional. The moments or social events where you connected with people, how you felt emotionally is probably what you took away and you still remember. So it's really important to remember people will remember how they felt more than what they heard. And if we as masjids and centers just focus on quality of experiences rather than quantity, rather than just doing a lot of things, it's probably what's stuck with you. So focusing on quality experiences, people will remember how they felt. Your reception team might have more of an impact than all of the khatiras throughout all of Tarawih. Right? Just how people felt walking through the door. The welcomeness, the vibe, the atmosphere, the environment, right? Think about all those things. Think about all the social connections that can happen. The way that you can foster social connections between Tarawih, after Tarawih, before Tarawih, whether that's like adding food or just having people say hello or welcoming new people to the community, having everybody, just say salam to each other that are next to each other all these days. Just think about all the just create quality experiences. We can overdo the strategy and the planning and the organizing. If we just focus on quality, do less but better, it'll actually touch people much more than trying to do a lot and we're just trying to get by. So it's a very important reminder that quality experiences are what people take away from the month of Ramadan. I appreciate that we're almost at time. And I'll ask everybody to give me 5 minutes, inshallah, to be able to address any key questions or thoughts in how to manage the rush. And I do have a special announcement that I want to make to you all. Don't want y'all to leave just yet. So, inshallah, there's a really special announcement that I'd like to make and talk about. But before we do that, I want to see if there's any questions that anybody may have. And I have my Q&A panel open. Again, if you're on, the 72 people that are on, I have my Q&A panel open. Shoot any questions my way. I'll do my best to address them as efficiently as possible. Is this recorded? Yes, this session is being recorded and we will, inshallah, send it out. We'll also put it up on YouTube if you want to share it with your teams, your staff, inshallah, we can do that. I won't be able to go back to any of the slides, but inshallah, what we can do I promise what we can do on our website is we can put up these slides for people to have. So hopefully I'll work with our tech team either in our YouTube video for this or on our website. We'll add these slides. And if you registered, inshallah, I will make sure to send these slides out in PDF form to everybody. Can you put the website in the chat? Yes, oaktreeinstitute.org. Oaktreeinstitute.org. on YouTube, Oak Tree Institute. Is having a weekly or regular iftar at the center essential? Honestly, brother or sister, that's really up to you all. I think, again, if we're trying to create quality experiences, if you're thinking about social interactions, maybe you can't do many. Maybe you could do one a week. Maybe you could just do one. I would say, and I think this is my advice for everybody, build on whatever you did last year by a little bit. So in every area, if you could just add one new thing to each of your committees or functions, like one new thing, like build on what worked well last year and add one new thing, actually that will go a lot way. So let's just say, as an example, let's say to the point last year, we just do regular community iftars. Maybe this year, hey, we're going to do a youth iftar, or we're going to do a neighbor's iftar, or we're going to do something a little bit different. Just going to add one new thing that will actually take the experience to another notch, another level. So that's my advice, right? Do one new thing across each of your key functions or programs. That will actually create hopefully a better experience for everybody. One new thing. If you could do more, bismillah. But if you can't, that's the baseline, right? If you want to hold yourself to some kind of benchmark. We're a new masjid. We need more guidance. Yeah, inshallah, reach out to us at Oak Tree Institute. We'd love to help, inshallah, and support you all. I will talk a little bit about the various things that we do in OTI here in a moment, but absolutely reach out to us, inshallah, and I'll give you our contact information here in a moment. Okay, so it's 10:01. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I will actually stick around to see if anybody has more information, more questions. But here's a special offer that I talked about. At Oak Tree Institute, I mentioned that we are truly invested in community leaders. Like every day we wake up and we think about how do we serve community leaders in the Muslim community, in our community. So we've been doing for many, many years, many initiatives, many trainings, many workshops, many traveling programs. And what we decided to do 2 years ago was consolidate some of the most important topics of how to be a great servant leader into an online course. We've done multiple launches of that online course. And this year, what we're doing for Ramadan is we're actually making that course an on-demand course. Access for any community leader at any time for them to be able to watch the key topics in this course. What does the course cover? So the course covers what we thought are some of the most essential things to be successful within a community space, within a nonprofit space. We call the course the Servant Leaders Playbook. It's a guide for Muslims serving in Islamic organizations. What it will train you on is how to be a servant leader. It will talk a lot more about how to be strategic and organized in your teamwork. It will talk quite a bit about how to create a thriving organizational culture within your institution. And it will talk about some foundational aspects of how to lead and manage yourself. We've launched this course several times in a cohort fashion. This year, we decided that we will leave it as an on-demand course. So anybody can access the course at any time. What we are also doing as a special promotion for everybody on this webinar and for everybody that sees this before Friday night is we're going to be giving 25% off the course at checkout if you use the discount code SLP25. So you will have access to this on-demand library of dozens of hours of recording, of training. There's toolkits, there's resources for you on how to organize, how to strategize. And also, honestly, what happened, so if you think of this as like a resource center for Muslim leaders, community leaders. What people have also done is many organizations have come to us and they tell us, hey, we want all our volunteers to have access to this. And so if you're looking to roll this out for yourself, you can access it right away. Scan the QR code. It will take you right to the landing page for our course. But if you want to bring us in just for your community, so maybe you have 30 volunteers, and maybe you're thinking about, hey, this is an added training tool, orientation tool, right before Ramadan that they can benefit from. It's self-paced. They can watch the videos in their car, walking, driving, wherever they want. It's a self-paced program. So we want to get it to all our volunteers. We want them to watch it. We want them to have this training. We want them to be ready before Ramadan. Reach out to us directly. Brother Zawad Ahmed is representative manager. He's in the chat. He's talking to many of you. Reach out to him by email, zawad@oaktreeinstitute.org, if you want a special group rate for your masjid or your community center to get access to this online course. Again, it's like a resource center for community leaders on foundational leadership management skills for them to organize and help themselves out, to hopefully take their work to the next level. So, Jazakallah khairan and barakallah fikum. Again, we'll share these slides, we'll share this information. I will stick around. If anybody has to drop, don't feel obligated, feel free to go. I'll stick around and see if there's any more questions before we close tonight's session, inshallah. There's a let me see. There's a good question on, I think, a question around like parking, managing the crowd, a lot of things happening. Yeah, so I think if you have a lot of moving pieces in your masjid, start to break them up into different teams that need to take them on. So your parking team, your reception team, your maybe volunteer team at different parts of the masjid. Start to think about now of how to divide and conquer those tasks and start to recruit volunteers. I had mentioned early on, if you already are proactive and you're planning on the different aspects, you have a list of all the things that need to happen, right? That checklist. If you're going to pull out a department, you maybe need to staff, maybe you need to get seasonal staff, or maybe you can recruit volunteers from now. So that's one of the ways, like start to break up the different sections of your masjid and have them get organized. Good question. What are the main things that should happen in Ramadan? We have a women's section, a youth section, a men's section. I think the main things that happen, and again, I would encourage you, I have a good a webinar recording from a few years ago on how to manage programming as think inclusively about your Ramadan programming. And I talk quite a bit about understanding the different demographics of your community and how to cater specific programs and initiatives for each of them. You don't have to overdo it. If you only have the capacity to do one main program, do that one main program, but make it dynamic. But if you have, I've been in a center, I've managed a center where we had a youth tarawih and preteens tarawih. We had a babysitting and kids program. We had a main hall. We're doing all that during tarawih. We have parking team, reception team, maintenance team. So, I've been there, and we're thinking very intentionally and very specifically about all the things that we can do. Maybe that's more advanced, but that's absolutely the case for many institutions. If you need to get to that level, you should absolutely push your teams to be at that level. So good question. Reach out to us at OTI, and maybe we can also help with further training in other aspects, or take the SLP course. Hopefully it can help with some of those basics as well. What other types of events or topics can be covered in Ramadan besides fundraisers or iftars? So definitely as you all probably know, and you've seen, my focus is on the leadership and management piece of this. I think there might be other good resources on how to create spiritual themes or spiritual topics, or how to convey messages around the Islamic, the Islamic spirit or the Islamic environment better. That's not really the focus of this webinar. It's really kind of how to lead, how to manage most effectively our centers and our masajid. But it's a good question, and I don't know of any specific resources, but if you want to reach out to us directly at OTI, I can try to put you in contact with some good resources or some advice and on that. But again, if you ask me, if you think about what you can do and your capabilities as a team, and just focus on doing that, your teams know what they can do. It's a good starting place. Okay, mashallah. Yes, Jazakallah khair. Great point for those that are still on. Please be very mindful of your neighbors and those around you. So that's another risk thing to be mindful of. Our neighbors, the noise, preparing them, orienting them, being mindful of the impact of 30 nights, particularly the last 10 nights, of the crowd noise and all of those things. Yeah, that's part of managing your risks. Go back and, hey, what are we not thinking about? Well, we're not thinking about our neighbors. We're not thinking about the traffic that will cause. We're not thinking about, well, we should talk to the police department and let them know that we're going to be up. There are going to be parking issues. There's going to be this. There's going to be that. Maybe we should prep our council, our city council. Maybe we should prep our neighbors, businesses around us. Yeah, that's a part of like managing the risks. So that's a great call out. Definitely do that. And of course, yes, definitely invite them. Sister Dana, great call out. Like definitely invite them, bring them in. That will be very helpful. Do I volunteer every day or a couple of days a week? The masjid I go to has iftars every day. If they have iftars every day and you're volunteering, just if I am a masjid that has iftar every day, hopefully I have a team of volunteers for every day. So I'm recruiting from now, not just donors for those iftar nights, but I'm trying to recruit volunteers that will help on those iftar nights. So that would be my best, and of course, hopefully, Saqib, from there you can figure out what's best for you in terms of your workload. Good question. Let me see if somebody had their hand up. Can't bring you off mute, but I would love if you want to type in your chat or ask your question in the Q&A panel. I think I can get to it. I don't think I missed anything else, and we're 10 minutes over. Jazakallah khair. I don't see anything else, any other questions or comments. So ask Allah to bless you all. We ask Allah to make this Ramadan the best Ramadan of our lives. We ask Allah to allow it to be a month of forgiveness for us and mercy for us and returning to Him. And we ask it to be a month where we enable and empower our community, our masjid, our center, to be able to really serve the goals of Allah Azza wa Jal and the mission of Allah Azza wa Jal to another level and with excellence. Barakallahu feekum, jazakallahu khairan. Appreciate everybody that came on. Inshallah, we'll share this recording with everybody that's registered. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless you all this blessed month and to accept all our actions. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.